some goodbyes do not happen all at once. They happen while you are still texting back, still explaining, still hoping that one more effort will make someone remember your value. And that kind of pain is so hard to name because it is not only the ache of losing someone, it is the ache of feeling yourself disappear while trying not to lose them. It is the tiredness of checking your phone with a hopeful heart and a heavy stomach. It is the private bargain you keep making with yourself. Maybe if you are softer, maybe if you are clearer, maybe if you ask for less, maybe if you become easier to keep, they will finally stay in the way you need. You can feel how exhausting that is, can't you? There is a grief that comes from being left, and then there is a deeper grief that comes from watching yourself beg a closed heart to become open. That grief touches your dignity. It touches your trust in yourself. It makes you wonder whether love is supposed to feel like constant uncertainty. It makes you think that maybe the problem is not the connection. Maybe the problem is you. Let me say this clearly. The problem is not that you loved deeply. The problem is that you kept pouring your life into a place that could not hold it. And when that happens long enough, love starts getting confused with effort, attachment starts getting confused with devotion, anxiety starts dressing itself up as loyalty. That is where so many people get stuck. You think your willingness to stay proves the purity of your heart. You think your patience is noble. You think the ache you carry means the connection must be special, because why else would it hurt this much? But pain is not always proof of depth. Sometimes pain is simply proof that you are trying to build a home inside a person who has not made room for you. And here is the paradox at the center of all this, right? People often do not arrive while you are still pleading with the wrong ones, not because life is punishing you, not because you are failing some secret test, but because chasing what is not mutual keeps your energy turned towards scarcity. It keeps your body, your mind, and your spirit organized around absence. You become so focused on getting one person to choose you that you stop noticing all the places where peace, honesty, and reciprocity could actually meet you. So this is not just about letting go of a person. It is about letting go of the version of you that believes love must be negotiated under pressure. It is about learning that the connections meant to nourish you are not built on begging, guessing, shrinking, waiting, and performing. They are built on willingness, on openness, on truth. And I know that sounds simple when your heart is tangled. I know that when you have invested so much, release can feel like failure. It can feel like giving up too soon. It can feel like throwing away the possibility of being loved. But stay with me here. What feels like giving up may actually be the first honest act of self-respect you have made in a very long time. Because the moment you stop trying to force someone to stay, something sacred becomes possible. You begin to hear yourself again. You begin to see the cost of what you have been calling love. You begin to notice how much of your energy has been spent managing someone else's inconsistency. And in that new quiet, the right people, the honest people, the available people become easier to recognize. Not because you become perfect, because you become available to what is real. Most people do not cling because they are foolish. They cling because some part of them learned very early that love was unstable. Maybe affection came mixed with withdrawal. Maybe approval arrived only when you performed well. stayed quiet, pleased others, or anticipated someone's moods. Maybe care was present, but it was inconsistent enough that your nervous system learned to chase closeness instead of resting inside it. So later, when someone gives you mixed signals, your body does not always read that as danger. Sometimes it reads it as familiar. Sometimes chaos feels like chemistry. Sometimes distance feels intriguing. Sometimes crumbs feel meaningful because a part of you was trained to make a feast out of very little. That is not weakness, that is adaptation. Your system got smart in the way it knew how. It learned to scan, to earn, to overfunction, to keep the bond alive at any cost. And for a while, maybe that helped you survive emotional environments where direct needs were not welcomed. But what once protected you can later trap you. You carry those old strategies into adult relationships and then blame yourself for caring too much, when really you are reenacting a pattern your body still believes is necessary. This is why you can know, logic, ally, that someone is not showing up for you and still feel magnetized toward them. This is why clarity can sit in your mind while longing still lives in your chest. This is why you can promise yourself you will stop reaching out, then find your fingers typing again at midnight like they have their own unresolved agenda. Your fingers are not evil, sweetheart. They are just unemployed therapists with terrible boundaries. Sometimes you laugh because otherwise you would cry, and honestly, that counts as wisdom too. But beneath the humor is something important. You are not dealing with a lack of intelligence. You are dealing with a pattern built from hope, fear, memory, and the very human longing to be chosen. And when you understand that, shame begins to loosen. You stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" You begin asking, "What old story am I still living inside?" Here is one of the root stories many people carry. If I can just love better, they will become capable of loving me well. That story sounds romantic, but it is brutal because it makes your worth dependent on someone else's evolution. It makes you responsible for drawing tenderness out of people who may not be willing, ready, or able to offer it. It turns every delay into a puzzle, every silence into a self-improvement assignment, every unmet need into a reason to become smaller, sweeter, less inconvenient. No wonder you are tired. There is also a spiritual layer here, and I want to speak about it gently. When you stay attached to what drains you, you begin to override your own inner guidance. You feel the tension, you notice the confusion, you sense the imbalance, but because you want the connection to work, you start bargaining with your own truth. You call your intuition fear, you call your exhaustion love, you call the repeated ache a test of commitment, and your spirit pays for that. Not in some dramatic punishment. In a simpler way, you lose your sense of inner clean air. You stop trusting the signals that are trying to protect your peace. You become noisy inside. And when your inner world gets noisy, it becomes harder to recognize what is calm, mutual, and aligned. That is why release matters. Not because letting go instantly delivers a perfect relationship, Life does not work like a vending machine where you return one unsuitable connection and a soulmate drops out with exact change. I wish it did. That would make breakups much more efficient. But release matters because it restores your own signal. It helps you hear the difference between intensity and truth, between longing and alignment, between being activated and being loved. The right people are not always the most dazzling at first. Often, they are the ones you can breathe around, the ones who do not make you audition for basic care, the ones who bring steadiness where you were once trained to expect suspense. So I want to give you a simple path for this shift. I call it the open hands practice. So, 3 steps: release, return, receive. Release is the moment you stop gripping what is asking you to abandon yourself. It does not mean you stop feeling overnight. It does not mean you stop missing them by morning. It means you stop feeding the dynamic that keeps reopening the wound. You stop adding your life force to a pattern that keeps proving it cannot hold your heart with consistency. Release is not emotional numbness. It is the decision to stop turning pain into a full-time job. Return is what happens next, because once you loosen your grip on them, you will need somewhere to place your energy, and this is where many people panic. They know how to reach for someone else. They do not always know how to come back to themselves. Return means turning your attention inward with honesty and tenderness. It means noticing your own body, your own needs, your own neglected life. It means becoming someone you can rest with again. Receive is the final step, and it is softer than it sounds. It is not about hunting down better people with a clipboard and an enlightened glow. It is about becoming able to recognize what is mutual, to notice what feels calm, to let yourself accept care that does not arrive wrapped in confusion. Receive means you stop measuring love by how hard you had to work for it. You begin measuring it by how safe, clear, and alive you feel inside it. Release, return, receive. Simple words, lifelong practice. And here is what most people miss. The purpose of this practice is not to become detached and superior. It is not to prove you no longer need anyone. It is not to become so guarded that no one can touch you. The purpose is to become honest, honest about what drains you, honest about what you deserve, honest about the difference between connection and compulsion. Now let us make this real. Release begins in very small moments, not dramatic declarations, not long final speeches that secretly hope to be interrupted by a grand confession. Real release is often quieter than that. It can start with not sending the extra paragraph. It can start with not checking whether they watched your story. It can start with not reopening the conversation in your mind for the 14th time before breakfast. Try this. The next time you feel the urge to reach out just to reduce your anxiety, pause for 90 seconds. That is all. Do not make it a vow. Do not turn it into a lifetime commitment. Just pause. Put the phone down. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice what is happening in your body. Is your chest tight? Is your jaw clenched? Is your stomach dropping? Is there panic underneath the impulse? Is there grief? Is there loneliness? Let yourself name it. Often the reaching is not about connection at all. It is about regulation. You are trying to get relief from the discomfort of uncertainty. That is deeply human. But when you notice that, a little space opens, and inside that space, you can choose something kinder than reenactment. Maybe you place your hand on your chest and say, I know you want contact right now because you want certainty. I know I am here. Maybe you walk outside for 5 minutes without your phone. Maybe you write the message in your notes app instead of sending it. Maybe you say out loud, this urge is real, but it does not have to become an action. These are not glamorous steps. They will not make dramatic music swell in the background, but they matter because every small pause teaches your system that discomfort can be survived without self-abandonment. Another release experiment is this. Make a short list of what this connection actually feels like in your body, not what you hope it could become. Write down the physical truth, tightness, waiting, overthinking, restlessness, relief mixed with dread. Now write down how mutual care tends to feel clarity, warmth, steadiness. You are not doing this to shame yourself. You are training your attention to recognize lived reality over fantasy. And fantasy can be persuasive, my love. Fantasy has excellent marketing. Fantasy will take one decent text message and turn it into a whole future with matching mugs and emotional maturity. So we have to be gentle and honest at the same time. Release also means grieving what was never fully given. That part hurts. Sometimes you are not only letting go of a person, you are letting go of the person you hoped they would become. You are letting go of the version of the relationship that only existed in your longing. And grief like that can feel embarrassing because there was no concrete thing to hold. But unrealized love can ache just as much as ended love. Let yourself mourn it without mocking yourself for having hoped. Now comes return. When you stop orbiting someone else's inconsistency, there can be a strange emptiness. You may suddenly realize how much mental real estate they occupied, how many of your thoughts bent around them, how much of your day was organized around signs, replies, hints, and possibilities. Return asks you to take that attention and bring it home. Start simple. Ask yourself, what have I been neglecting while I was trying to be chosen? Maybe it is sleep. Maybe it is your appetite. Maybe it is your creativity. Maybe it is your friendships. Maybe it is the quiet part of you that has not felt listened to in months. Choose one small act of return every day for a week, not 10 acts. 1. Make your bed slowly. Eat breakfast without scrolling their profile. Sit by a window for 7 minutes and do nothing productive. Take a walk and let your thoughts settle instead of feeding them fresh evidence. Read 2 pages of something nourishing. Stretch before bed. Clean one corner of a room that has started to look like your inner life felt. These things seem ordinary because they are ordinary, and ordinary care is holy when you have been living in emotional chaos. Return also means changing the questions you ask. Instead of asking, How do I make them understand my value? Try asking, why am I trying so hard to convince someone of something that should be visible? Instead of asking, what do they feel for me? Ask, how do I feel inside this dynamic? Instead of asking, when will they come around? Ask, what part of me is waiting at the door of someone else's indecision instead of entering my own life? That shift is powerful, because when your focus stays on them, you remain powerless. Their mood becomes the weather. Their response becomes the verdict. Their availability becomes the ruler by which you measure your worth. Return breaks that spell. It brings your authority back into your own hands. And let me say something tender here. Returning to yourself might feel unfamiliar at first. If you have spent years being externally oriented, self-return can feel boring, lonely, even wrong. Peace can feel underwhelming when your nervous system has been trained on drama. Do not mistake that unfamiliar quiet for emptiness. It may simply be the sound of your life settling. One more practice for return. At the end of the day, ask yourself 3 questions. Where did I abandon myself today? Where did I honor myself today? What would 1% more honesty look like tomorrow? Keep it light. This is not a courtroom. This is a conversation with your own soul. And then we come to receive. This is where many people wobble, because they know how to chase. They know how to analyze. They know how to endure. Receiving is different. Receiving asks you to let good things be enough. It asks you to stop being suspicious of what is clear simply because it lacks chaos. It asks you to notice when someone's presence feels easy and not immediately label it boring. Try this experiment. The next time you interact with someone new, or even with someone already in your life, notice whether you feel more grounded or more scrambled afterward. Not more impressed, not more obsessed, more grounded. Can you breathe? Can you be yourself? Do you feel the need to perform? Do you leave the interaction with clarity or with 12 new questions and a headache? This matters because the right people are not always recognized by fireworks. Sometimes they are recognized by the absence of dread, by the lack of emotional whiplash, by the simple relief of not having to decode every word. Mutual connection often feels less like a chase and more like a place where your body can unclench. Receive also means letting support count. When a friend checks on you, let it matter. When someone shows consistency, notice it. When life offers a quiet kindness, stop brushing past it, because it does not match the grand dramatic rescue your hurt was secretly waiting for. Healing often enters softly, through steadiness, through small evidence, through people who do what they say, through moments that do not require interpretation. And yes, part of receiving is discernment. Not everyone kind is right for you. Not every available person is deeply aligned. But discernment is different from distrust. Discernment says, let me notice reality clearly. Distrust says, if it feels calm, something must be wrong. We are not trying to make you naive. We are helping you reconnect with truth that does not need intensity to feel significant. This is also where boundaries become loving instead of punitive. A boundary is not a revenge speech in better vocabulary. It is simply clarity in action. It is saying, I cannot keep participating in what harms me. It is leaving the conversation earlier. It is declining the late-night breadcrumb. It is not reopening doors that only seem interested in you when your energy starts to move elsewhere. You do not need to be angry to do this. You only need to be honest. There is another gentle test you can use when your mind starts romanticizing what hurt you. Ask yourself, did this connection invite the best of me forward, or did it keep pulling me into survival mode? Did I feel more honest, more rested, more open in its presence? Or did I become a detective, a negotiator, a tiny emotional janitor cleaning up messes I did not make? These questions are not meant to harden your heart. They are meant to help you remember that love should add truth to your life, not constant confusion. Sometimes the clearest evidence is not in the words that were spoken, but in the person you had to become to keep the bond going. If you had to silence your needs, dim your intuition, and call instability passion, then your soul has already given you important information. Listen to that information with compassion. It is not bitterness. It is wisdom returning to your side. And wisdom does not usually shout. It often whispers, enough now. Come closer to what is clear. That whisper may be quiet, but it is strong enough to rebuild a life around for you now. And here, right here, is the permission I want to place directly into your hands. You are allowed to stop trying. You are allowed to stop composing yourself into a shape that is easier for someone else to keep. You are allowed to stop translating your needs into smaller and smaller language so that your desire for clarity does not inconvenience the people who benefit from your confusion. You are allowed to stop calling your self-erasure patience. You are allowed to stop treating your tenderness like a bargaining chip. You are allowed to leave the emotional waiting room. Read that again inside yourself. You are allowed to leave the emotional waiting room. You do not need one more sign. You do not need one more disappointing cycle to prove that your pain is valid. You do not need to hit some invisible threshold of suffering before you earn the right to choose peace. You do not have to keep standing at the edge of someone's unwillingness just because your heart is sincere. Your sincerity is beautiful, but sincerity alone does not make a connection healthy. Love is not measured by how much hurt you can endure without leaving. It is not measured by how often you forgive confusion. It is not measured by your ability to remain hopeful in places that repeatedly starve you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is admit that your heart cannot keep living on promises that never become shelter. And maybe a part of you is scared that if you stop holding on, nothing will replace it. Maybe you are afraid of the silence after the chase, afraid of the empty space, afraid that letting go will confirm your deepest fear that no one is really coming. Stay with me here. The empty space is not proof that you are unlovable. It is often the first clean room your life has had in a long time. And clean rooms can feel stark before they feel peaceful. That does not mean you made the wrong choice. It means your system is adjusting to the absence of chaos. It means you are no longer spending every ounce of energy managing uncertainty. It means there is finally room for truth to enter, even if at first truth feels quiet. You do not have to make yourself less loving to protect yourself. You simply have to stop offering your love where it is used to keep you available but not cherished. There is a difference. Let me say something that might land deeply. Releasing the wrong people is not rejecting love. It is refusing counterfeit versions of it. It is refusing connections where your hope is consumed faster than your spirit can replenish it. It is refusing the arrangement where you give devotion and receive ambiguity. And that refusal is holy. Because every time you stop begging the wrong ones to stay, you tell your own soul, I am no longer available for relationships that require me to disappear. That is a turning point. That is a threshold. That is where self-respect stops being a concept and becomes a lived choice. Now, the closing truth in all of this is softer than the beginning, but deeper. The right people finding you is not magic in the childish sense. It is alignment in the human sense. When you stop chasing unavailable hearts, you become more visible to what is reciprocal. You also become more visible to yourself, and that changes everything. You speak differently. You listen differently. You recognize red flags earlier, not because you are cynical, but because you are no longer hungry enough to call them home decor. You choose differently because your worth is no longer on trial. You stop being seduced by potential alone. You start valuing presence, honesty, follow-through, peace. This is what opens up. Not a perfect life, not guaranteed romance by next Tuesday at 4:15. Let us stay realistic and spare ourselves that nonsense. But for many people, what opens up is something quieter and far more nourishing. Better friendships, better boundaries, better self-trust, a more settled nervous system, more room for joy, and yes, often better love, because you are no longer trying to build intimacy out of longing and guesswork. The right people may not arrive with dramatic speeches. They may come as steadiness, as respect, as consistency, as someone who answers clearly, as a friend who remembers your heart, as a partner who does not make you earn basic reassurance, as a life that begins to feel less like pursuit and more like participation. And even before anyone new arrives, something important happens. You become right for yourself. You become someone who can witness your own pain without abandoning your truth. You become someone who can feel longing without turning it into self-betrayal. You become someone who knows that being wanted is not the same as being well-loved, and that being chosen by the wrong person can never heal the wound of not choosing yourself. That is the deeper transformation here. Not just that the right people find you, that you stop losing yourself while waiting for them. So if your heart is tired today, let this be the breath you take instead of the message you send. Let this be the line in the sand that is also an act of kindness. Let this be the day you stop confusing being needed with being cherished. Stop confusing intensity with intimacy. Stop confusing the fear of losing someone with proof that they are meant for you. Come back to the open hands practice. Release what asks you to shrink. Return to what helps you hear yourself. Receive what is honest, mutual, and calm. Again, release, return, receive. You do not have to do it perfectly. You do not have to do it all at once. You do not have to become unbothered overnight. You are human. You will miss them some days. You may still feel the pull. You may still rehearse old conversations in the shower like an unpaid screenwriter. That is all right. Healing is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of truth. So be gentle with yourself. Firm but gentle. Tender but clear. Soft heart, strong boundary. That is a beautiful way to live. And if something in you is loosening right now, trust that. If something in you feels seen, trust that. If something in you is grieving, let it grieve. Grief is not a sign you should go back. It is often a sign that you are finally telling the truth about what hurt. You are not behind. You are not foolish for having hoped. You are not hard to love because the wrong person could not love you well. You are simply at the moment where clarity is asking for your courage. Take its hand and walk yourself home. If this landed somewhere tender in you, stay with that tenderness. Let it become a new standard, not just a passing feeling. Let it remind you that what is meant to remain in your life will not require you to beg, bargain, and break yourself to keep it there. The right people do not need your performance to recognize your value. The right people meet you where honesty lives. The right people do not make home feel like a test, and until they arrive, be the place where you no longer abandon yourself. That is not settling. That is where real love begins.